Trump's tariffs. Now they're taking down the Liberation Day tariffs because the court said that Trump's pretty much executive powers were an overreach and he doesn't have the right to impose tariffs, even though he does have, well, the right to lead economic commerce. But I guess the trade courts forgot about that part.
Federal court has just blocked the bulk of President Trump's sweeping federal court has just blocked the bulk of President Trump's sweeping global tariffs from going into effect. The ruling comes from the U.S. Court of International Trade in Manhattan. It's a unique and relatively low-key division of the federal judiciary. But tonight it is flexing.
The what was it? The C.I.T. So the International Trade Court. Now, this International Trade Court is a pretty interesting court, right? It has 9 justices, okay? And out of these 9 justices, I'll tell you the appointing of those justices. We got about 4 Obama judges, so judges that was appointed by Obama on this this committee. And then we got 2 Biden judges, then we got 2 Trump judges, and then we got 1 Reagan judge with a total of 9 judges. Now, in this decision to strike down Trump's judges, this was a cabinet of 3 out of the 9 judges. Now, these 3 out of the 9 judges came together and decided to put this motion on Trump's tariffs. Well, here's the thing. Well, yeah, they can do that, and it was a unanimous decision. All 3 of them decided. Now, I think it was a Obama judge, a Reagan judge, and a Trump judge on this committee that decided that they want to stop Trump's tariffs and that he doesn't have the power to do it through the, I believe the International Economic Powers Act, the International Economic Power Trade Act.
Its authority in a big way. The 3-judge panel ruled in favor of an injunction against the tariffs which have roiled worldwide financial markets.
Yes, another injunction again. And here's the thing, by another federal judge. We just had to beat one federal judge, take it to Supreme Court over immigration, over deportation. Now here we are again, round 2 with another federal judge, this time a nice little cabinet of them talking about your tariffs are unconstitutional. You are overreaching your executive power. Even though the president has the right to declare a national state of emergency, even though in that Powers Act it says that he does have a control over economic commerce, and tariffs is a part of economic commerce. But then you want to know what the argument was? Tariffs don't count as part of economic commerce. I know, right? And that's why it was appealed immediately.
Markets in recent months. Unclear right now whether the injunction is temporary or permanent, but the decision is potentially massive political, economic, and legal repercussions. Just moments ago.
No, it's permanent until they hit it to appeals, and they're going to appeal to see if they can get a stay on it. So pretty much like a pause. Like, okay, we hear what the court said, but let's get a pause on this and let's bring it to the Supreme Court, and then we'll see it. We'll take it from there. And that's pretty much what their process is going through. So yes, the federal court got in the way of Trump's deportation initiative. They failed on that one. And now they're trying to get in the way of Trump's trade initiative by taking away one of his best negotiating cards, which is tariffs. We'll see how this works out.
White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller wrote online, "The judicial coup is out of control." I'm joined now by former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig and former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod. Ellie, is this a judicial coup? What is this court?
No, this is a fully legitimate federal court. I should note.
But here's the thing. It's 3 justices that came together, and they didn't even come together with their full cabinet. Yes, only 3 justices out of the 9 that are on there came together and made this ruling. So when we say it feels like a judicial coup, it's like, yo, we just got done dealing with the Supreme Court on immigration. Just when that got done, it's not even been a month. And now there's another one targeting Trump's tariffs. Yeah, it does feel like a judicial coup. It's like you guys are doing everything to go against the president's, his agenda. And yes, the president does have power to oppose tariffs, especially under, I believe, what was it called? I do want to make sure I get it right, guys. You feel me? Because I have to actually write a whole lot of notes on this. But what was it? The International Energy Emergency Act or something like that. I'll double check that one.
Oh, this was a 3-0 opinion. The 3 judges on this court were appointed by President Reagan, President Obama, and President Trump. So I don't know where they're getting this coup language from. This is a huge setback for Trump and his administration. As big a deal as the tariffs were, this is as big a deal in the opposite
I would
direction.
give
It
them that one.
essentially pauses for now, rules illegal and unconstitutional almost all of the tariffs that have been in place. And the
Okay, yes, it was the IEEPA. So it's the International, what was it? Enemies Economic Power Act. Yes, Enemies Economic Power Act. That's the act that Trump was going under, pretty much declaring a national emergency. And now they took down his Liberation Day tariffs, but they wasn't able to strike down his China tariffs because, well, he actually had pretty good backing on that, and that being a threat to American national security. So the aluminum and the steel tariffs stand, but the ones on Liberation Day, they say was an overreach of, his power. Even though it does say under the IEEPA that he can control tariffs because tariffs is a part of economic commerce. And under the IEEPA, the president can control economic commerce.
core of the ruling is this. Typically, it is Congress that controls the tariff power. However, Congress can pass laws giving that power to the president in certain instances. They did that years ago in a statute called the IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Trump then declared, okay, we are in an international economic emergency because of our trade deficits, because of other economic worldwide factors. And this court unanimously 3-0 said, that is not an economic emergency. That is not what the law means. Having trade deficits, which we've had for 49 years continuously, that is not an economic emergency and has now struck down for the.
But that would be a straw man of the argument, to be quite honest with you. And the reason why I would call it a straw man, because it's like, okay, but here's the thing. He also, he did the China and the aluminum and steel under the IEEPA. Now, the Liberation Day ones were under the Section 301, where he can actually impose these tariffs if there's proof of unfair trade tactics. So they kind of straw man Trump on the Liberation Day tariffs, and it looks like they just went strictly under the IEEPA, or they just disregarded Section 31 altogether, which does give the president the power to go ahead and impose tariffs on unfair trade operators, countries.
Time being, all of those tariffs that were put in place on Trump's first day and then on quote unquote Liberation Day, April 2nd.
David, I mean, how much of a black eye is this for the administration?
Well, Trump loves tariffs. We know that. He thinks it's a cure-all for all of America's problems that will, raise revenue.
Well, actually, it is a straw man. They kind of simplified the argument, or they attacked this argument where it was weak, and they applied the standard of the IEEPA to his entire reason why he did the tariffs. And then when they wanted to bring up Section 301, they said, oh, the timeline doesn't match up. And remember, these are just 3 judges out of a 9-judge court. So like I said, we didn't really get the full judicial review anyway. That's what's so crazy about it as well. So like I said, they struck down almost everything under the IEEPA, pretty much saying that it is not a national emergency, which, I mean, if you want to go ahead and put the Liberation Day tariffs and you want to put it on that guideline, I can honestly agree with that. But under Section 301 is most definitely valid.
Revenues, it'll bring jobs flowing back here, manufacturing jobs. It will restore American respect and balance in the way, all of this. But in a weird way, I mean, in the short run, I think it creates a lot of havoc because everyone's trying to figure out when this, in the long run, it could save him from himself because these tariffs are bad economic policy, and these tariffs could raise costs on Americans. They're already starting to, so if the result of it is he's stymied in doing something that's going to raise costs for people, it may be a black eye, but it may also be a break for him.
Just legally, what's the recourse for the White House here?
So like any other federal case, this will be appealed. I think the first thing the White House is going to do is ask the Court of Appeals, which in this case is called the Federal Circuit. Usually the circuits are.
And here's the thing, though. I don't know why, once again, but here's actually, you know what? They did it smart this time. It just wasn't some random federal court or district court judge. And it was actually went through a federal court. But the thing is, they just went straight on to a national injunction, and they didn't even really, put it through any other court. But here's the problem, though. They don't got to. They don't got to. The C.I.T., yeah, they kind of got overleaning rule on what goes on in trade or how these trade policies are utilized. And this is why it's going to make it to the Supreme Court. One, because out of 3 of the 9 justices are on there and an automatic appeal. And, there's many arguments to be made here, seeing that the Supreme Court has levied, trade policies to a president before.
1st through 11th, this is separate. They're going to ask the Federal Circuit, first of all, to block this ruling, essentially to unblock the tariffs. Then the White House is going to appeal to the Federal Circuit, which again functions as that mid-level court of appeals. And then whoever loses there, I think, is very likely to appeal up to the U.S. Supreme Court. This could wind up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Look, I think if we look at the recent U.S. Supreme Court opinions, they've been skeptical of these sort of dramatic invocations.
Honestly, it is kind of crazy how they are coming after Trump's economic, pretty much his economic trading, one of his best assets. Tariffs is one of the main reasons why we have these countries lining up to make a trade deal. And it's the main reason why we're getting these big corporations to come back and reshore into America. That's the main reason why, because they don't want to miss out on our market. Now, like I said, a lot of people want to say that, oh, it's a price on the people. It can only be passed on to the people, even though there's been various companies that said that they're going to eat the tariffs. And if companies can eat tariffs, does that automatically kill the logic of, oh, it's only a tax on the people, it's only going to raise prices? I mean, they lied to you about being inflationary. So what else do you think they lied to you about?
Vacations by the administration. As one example, the Supreme Court has found that the Alien Enemies Act, this does not involve an invasion or an incursion. So I think there's some skepticism there towards this sort of tendency the administration has of calling everything an emergency, everything an attack, everything an incursion, rebellion, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I think that...
But still, though, the Supreme Court still ruled in Trump's favor under the Aliens Enemies Act, still. So here's the thing. I do believe that, Trump's team is going to most likely get this pushed to the Supreme Court and most likely get it ruled in his favor, because they honestly have a lot of good arguments. And I'm not saying that the C.I.T. court didn't have a really good argument saying that, all right, hold on now, this isn't a national emergency. This is more for unfair trade policy. Unfair trade policy is not part of a national emergency. And that's a valid point. I will give it to the courts on that one. But they did neglect the Section 301 Section 301 under the Trade Act argument. They neglected to put that one in there. And that's what the Trump administration is going to ride on. And on the fact that, the courts have let presidents kind of run away with economic policy before without making no national injunction. So that's also going to be a point brought up as well.
What we know is that Trump is not a great respecter of rules and laws and norms and institutions, doesn't want to be constrained, wants to expand the power of the executive, and declaring these emergencies has given him the legal pretext to do it. And now this is being challenged on a lot of different fronts. So there are long-term implications for it.
It also, it certainly throws a monkey wrench into any negotiations that are going on between the U.S. and other countries. Do those continue during a period like this? Yeah,
I think that's a very big question. I don't know how you negotiate if you don't know. Maybe I just don't know. And
remember, guys, this is a Liberation Day tariffs only. So it's tariffs on China, which stand because, the courts recognize the fentanyl problem. So they let the 20% tariff stay. But let's say the 10% will be on pause now. So if these were to, stay current, then that means like China would go from having a 30% base tariff to a 20% base tariff, because the fentanyl tax would still apply, because the IEEPA would apply to that, because it is a concern of national security, and China is admittedly a threat to our economy and national security. So taking any, tariffs off China would actually, that would kind of seem a bit erroneous. But applying it to Liberation Day, it is a valid argument. I will give them that. But leaving out, certain sections and, leaving out certain laws, I can see where they made the argument. I can see where they made a winning point.
That's one of the reasons why this is going to throw the whole trade picture into kind of havoc in the next
So, Ellie, do tariffs remain in place right now?
Most of them, no. Most of them are now suspended. So the opinion specifies 3 categories of tariffs that are now declared illegal. The trafficking tariffs, which were declared on the first day, January 20th, directed primarily at Canada and Mexico, and at China. Those numbers have shifted, but Canada, Mexico, China, those are now on hold. Those are now struck down. Also,
are you serious?
The so-called worldwide and
you took off the trafficking one, bro. Whose side are y'all on? Now that's actually a national emergency. You're telling me trafficking into the country is not a national emergency? Now, come on now. That's a bit wild. Now, you could have said the Liberation Day ones. I'd have let y'all have that argument. But I'm pretty sure they're going to win on the trafficking argument. If they're taking on the trafficking tariffs, they're going to have to make a pretty compelling argument about how human and drug trafficking is not a national emergency that Americans should be concerned about, or is something that we should punish coming from other countries.
And retaliatory tariffs, those were the ones announced on April 2nd on so-called Liberation Day. The 10% on everyone that Trump announced that day, the 11 to 50% that was imposed on other countries, and the retaliatory tariffs on China. So all of those categories, they're all on hold.
The tariffs that have already been collected.
Right. Oh, that's a great question. Do they go back? I don't know the answer to that. I think
actually no, they do want them to go back. And that's also the wild thing, because I'm just like, damn, was this something done by like the big corporations or something? Because one, it happened out of nowhere. And then also two, they also want that the Treasury to give back the money to the, big corporations that paid these tariffs and that took it to their profit margin and didn't raise their prices. So like I said, guys, it is a bit funny how things are working out. Like they want them to give back the money that was supposed to help American taxpayers save money. Okay, guys.
If this
they're for the people though, right?
No, it's good. I would imagine that if this ultimately gets struck down, if it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, then there could be an action brought by those other countries to recover. I mean, it would be money wrongly paid, according to this ruling that just came down.
Ellie Honig, David Axelrod, thanks very much.
Markets are...
That is wild. Yep. So basically, we got the courts pretty much wanting to, takes tax revenue away from the American people. And these are the same, like I said, these are the same Dems that wants to raise taxes so they can, avoid less government spending, even though they raise taxes and still do way more government spending. I mean, it's absolutely wild how these people operate economically, but honestly, Trump has a really good argument on the tariffs. And this does seem like another kicking and screaming moment, a tantrum by the courts again, because, that's really the only power. That's where the Dems honestly have the most power, is in the courts right now. And they're kicking and screaming in the courts, trying to hold on to whatever power they got. So it doesn't make sense that they'd go after Trump's tariffs, since it's one of his main cards and I guess one of his main tools in his arsenal or weapons. It doesn't make sense. But I do see this going to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will most likely rule in Trump's favor again, because I'm gonna be real with you, they had a stronger argument with the immigration. This one is gonna fall flat on his face again. So hey, Dems, have fun with this one, but when it comes out ruling to Trump, don't cry.
Jumping in after hours trading on that news that a court has halted Trump's, quote, Liberation Day tariffs temporarily. Dow futures rising immediately on the news by more than 1%, 1.1%, 500 points, about 1.5% for the S&P 500, even more than that for the NASDAQ. The bulk of Trump's tariffs now paused by a court. Now, this is a 3-judge panel, as I said, a temporary pause, ruling Trump does not have the authority to impose the tariffs. Paula Reed is out front.
Which is being appealed, which was appealed within 2 hours of the ruling. Like I said, a 3-judge court out of nowhere just came down without even all 9 of its judges, just came down and just said, yep, we're just going to go ahead and pause these tariffs on the whole what was it? I think it was the Information Economic, Economic Emergency Power Act or something like that. Yeah. Nah, that's not actually a pretty good argument. I'll be real with you, especially when they leave out Section 301. That's the main argument that Trump's going to ride on, and the fact that, the courts do seem to be nitpicking with this one. They could also bring up multiple times where the president has ran pretty much economic policy, and they sat to the side and said nothing. And then they're also going to have to defend, how come the human trafficking or the trafficking tariff wasn't valid? How is that not an emergency? They're gonna have to explain that one. The Liberation Day, that's a decent argument, but the trafficking tax, I don't know about that one. That's gonna be a very weak argument.
All right, now, Paula, when we look at all of what's been going on with these tariffs, this is an outcome that many had not anticipated. A court getting in and saying Trump can't even do this to begin with. So, what can you tell us about this ruling?
But we've seen across the country are in various.
And all right, man. Shout out to my man Fox. He said it's wills all these libs in the blue. All right, my bad. He said it will. All these libs in the blue major cities are crying about tariffs is a tax, and the very leaders they elect tax the shit out of them. I know, right? I mean, they're talking about taxes. I'm just like, bro, you guys live in liberal cities. You guys get taxed out the ass and you love it. Actually, the same party that you guys honestly complain about, I mean, honestly, want to cut your taxes. The party that you complain about want to cut your taxes, but the party you're championing want to raise your taxes. Ain't that crazy?
Court blocking Trump's policies, but this is one of the first times we have seen a court blocking his ability to impose these global tariffs. Now, this particular lawsuit, this was brought by a legal advocacy group that represents small businesses and claimed that they had been severely harmed by these tariffs. And here, this is a very low profile court. As you noted, the U.S. Court of International Trade, they ruled in favor of a permanent injunction. So this is a permit. It's temporary, but it lasts until this case moves on. Injunction. So this is effectively grounds Trump's tariffs to a halt. So this is incredibly significant because we know that he uses these tariffs as a key part of his international trade so-called deals and policies. So to have this court block this with a preliminary injunction, this is surprising. And as you noted, this is going to have an impact not only on his policies, but on global markets. Now, we have also seen the administration rail against the fact that any courts can block policies put forth by the administration. So we are waiting for comment from the Justice Department, from the White House in response to this enormous decision.
All right, Paula, thank you very much. Let's go straight to Ryan Goodman, just joining us on the phone.
Well, hey, they took it from 1 district judge to 3 judges. Well, at least they upped their numbers.
As this news broke. So, Ryan, you heard Paula say, like, it's a court, the Court of International Trade, that many would not have heard of prior to tonight. Coming out and in unexpected fashion and ending the tariffs for now. How significant is this ruling?
It's very significant. The court at the end of the ruling says we're not just ruling for this plaintiff, but we're basically ruling for everybody that would be covered by the tariffs. There are other cases that have been brought to the same court. So it's in a sense ruling for all of those cases as well by saying that the tariffs are not legal.
Like I said, but they're forgetting Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. Kind of funny. It's kind of close to the same Trade Act he was using in 1977, but it's a pretty powerful tool because, one, this tool lets the president take action, including imposing tariffs against countries engaging in unfair trade practices. So if the Trump lawyers can make the argument that, well, these countries are engaging in unfair trade practices because of what they were doing with China or their import bans or their currency manipulation or their tariffs in general, then everything is valid under Section 301 of the Trade Act. That's just the fact of the matter right there. And that's what I'm saying. They did not consider that when they made this strike against Trump, these, 3 judges.
In some ways, the court's argument basically says this goes back to Congress. It boils down to the idea that there was always a poor fit for the tariffs being invoked by the administration because the administration says they were operating under this emergency National Security Act, and the court says, no, you aren't. That the National Security Act was not built for something like this. It's
No. See, that's what I'm saying. That's why I said they like strawmanned them, because that wasn't the only argument that they proposed. They said, no, we're going under not only the IEEPA, we're not just running with that alone, okay? We're also running with the Section 301 of the Trade Act. They said both of those arguments, and they said, no, we're striking it down because you said it's a matter of national emergency, and you said that was the reason for all your tariffs. That's the argument they used. They didn't even include their argument for the Section 301. They said the timeline doesn't match up. And I'm just like, well, what does that even got to do with the, hold on. Like, trust me, if you when you kind of read through how they went, how this was all set up, it was like, all right, yeah, this was definitely to go against Trump. But it's more valid than just a district judge coming out of nowhere. These guys actually do have the authority to do this. So I will give them that.
really Congress's authority to give it to you, and you don't have it yet. So it really means that the White House has to go to Congress, unless, of course, they can get this ruling overturned.
Okay, so can you walk through, though, the timing of all of this? I mean, we're in a situation where, I mean, this is a seismic shift. So what happens now, I guess, in terms of how long it would take to have this actually work its way through the court, or where do things go from the Court of International Trade? I mean, what's the timeline and process here?
Given the dramatic global implications, the administration in all likelihood will first ask the court itself just to put a pause on its own ruling. Yes, the ruling is one that is a permanent ruling. It's like its final decision, but they can ask the court, can you just pause it while we appeal? This is one of these rare situations in which the court itself, even though it ruled against the administration, might say, okay, we'll pause our ruling so you can appeal it. If they don't do that.
And then here's the thing, who are we appealing to? Are we appealing to the same 3 judges? Or are we appealing to the entire, court? Like all 9 justices that are on that court, even though it does outweigh heavily in Trump's favor. Because like I said, we got like 4 Biden appointed judges on there. Well, no, not 4 Biden appointed, but 4 Obama appointed judges on the CIT, the International Trade Court. And then we also got 2 Trump ones, 2 Biden ones, and then we got 1 Reagan. That doesn't seem like it's going to work in Trump's favor. So it is best that they take it to the appeal court instead of trying to have it retrialed, which I guess there were some people who were saying, oh, no, you should just get it ran through the entire court. And I'm just like, whoa. Trust me, that court is not leaning his favor. I'm pretty sure those 3 represented the feelings of that entire court. As much as I do not like to hear that or admit that, I'm pretty sure those 3 represented that in the entire feelings of that court, all 9 of them.
Then the administration will appeal it 1 step up to the First Circuit, and then the question becomes whether or not that Court of Appeals will stop this ruling from going into effect while they decide whether or not they want to overturn it. So we might get a pause quite quickly, which will obviously jolt everything back into place as it was before this ruling. But it's
just like they did with the on halting Trump's deportations. They put a pause on it. So here's the thing: most likely they'll grant Trump that pause, and the tariffs will be going back in there, and then they're gonna have to go ahead and like I said, work it up to the Supreme Court. And I do believe they work it up to the Supreme Court. There's a lot of arguments they can make to pretty much have Trump's stand. And like I said, we still pretty much do have the Supreme Court. At least out of like 7 out of 2 of them, or maybe every now and then we'll have a 6-3. So getting this push to the Supreme Court would be the best strategy for the Trump administration, to where they can actually have their full arguments heard out instead of only half of it. And then when they may have a good argument, they tell you it doesn't match up with the timeline. Like, man, ain't that dismissive as hell?
anybody's guess as to how that's going to go.
All right. Well, a very, very significant moment. Thank you so much, Ryan Goodman, as we try to digest the importance of that in this moment, as stocks are jumping right now.
Yeah, I bet they are. I mean, look, man, it is funny. Like I tell you, it's like the libs are damn near working for the corporate elites now. Like, look, guys, if you help us go against Trump, we'll help you go ahead and get your payments on tariffs back. It's like, bruh. What is going on when the libs are actually championing the corporate elites? They're actually happy.